Welcome back to another episode of You Asked For It, the show where you ask us questions and we spend time talking about them.
Yep.
And the way you ask us those questions, the most easy way to do it is just comment on this video with a question for next week, or you can send us an email, contact@accesschurchonline.org, or a Facebook message, Access Church.
Could someone do it the old-fashioned way and see you in church on Sunday and say, "Hey, Johnny, I have a question"?
You sure can. I might forget, but...
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
Send a pigeon.
If you want to come in and you're here on
Send
Sunday
a pigeon.
and you have a question, yes.
Yep.
You
can
Pony Express.
Pony Express, snail mail.
You can ask any one of us on Sunday.
Yep.
Okay, but we do have a question for this week. We got an email that came in. It's a rather long email, so this is the third week in a row, but we are going to change the wording. We're not changing the wording. It's still the same point of the question. I'm just going to basically sum up the very long email that came in. And essentially what they're asking is about a potential COVID vaccine. And we've talked a lot in the past about respecting authority. We've dealt with that a lot with the mask issue and obeying the authority that is above us. And their question is kind of, What should my thought process be if I'm told I have to take a vaccine that I personally, what they're saying in the email, I personally feel is going to be harmful to my body, has things in it that I don't want in my body? Is it an outright sin to inject those things in my body, or is it outright sin to disobey the authority that's telling me to get this vaccine? So kind of...
Yeah, I think that's
a whole bundle right there.
Relatively easy
That is
answer.
a good question.
That's
Great
a relatively easy answer, you
I
say?
think it is, yeah.
Oh, boy. I would like to hear this.
I think that particular one, the way you, and thanks for sending that in, because that's a great question. But in that particular case, I think it's easy to answer in the fact of this, that if the government tells you to do something that, we're supposed to do, if there's no other way around it, you're supposed to do it. And if it is so much against if you're afraid, if you think it's against your religion or whatever, then don't do it. But here's the key to it. The key is be willing to take the consequences. I think that is easy to say, hey, this is in my personal body. This is something that I just don't believe. I've heard in the vaccine might be tissue of fetuses or something. I don't know that. But if that were the case, yeah, I would have to really go, wow, man, what am I going to do here? I couldn't tell you the answer right now. It would be something I would need to, at the moment, discover for myself. But I know this, if I'm going to say, no, I cannot do that, then I have to be willing to take the consequences for it and say, my willingness to go to jail or prison is worth it for me to not cross or violate this principle I have in my life. So I don't think it's a sin if you're willing to take the consequences. That's called a choice. God gives us a choice. You do this or go to prison. Well, it's your choice. You're not sinning. You're saying, okay, I'll go to prison.
It's not That's confusing to me.
That's confusing to me as well.
It's not a sin if we're willing to accept the consequence.
Our government is telling us, government is telling us you have a choice.
But I think of that with everything then. Like...
Well, so is it not a sin to murder as long as I go to jail?
That's literally where my head just went.
No,
I made the choice, and I'm willing to accept the consequence.
See, that's covered under something totally different. That's a principle of God we can't do, period.
So then, but earlier, and I don't know if
Isn't it
this
a principle
person
of God,
referenced
though?
it in the email, but I would assume, because we talked so much about masks
and respecting authority, who's telling us to wear them.
Yep. So I viewed it as, if I don't wear a mask, I am sinning against what God wants me to do.
Because he has told me to respect authority.
I agree, and respect authority, do that. I said this question was different. This one was easier because this is something in my own body. So it's different than something I do or something I put on or something I say or places I go. This gets more personal than anything. They're going to inject something in my body.
Because a vaccine will fundamentally change, I don't know if it's DNA, whatever. It'll literally change the makeup of your body, your physical
we're
being.
not talking masks here.
Well,
Okay.
what if I was to say, and maybe I'm okay, just slap me if I'm getting too into this.
That's all right.
But there's people out there who think that masks are harmful to your, breathing in your own CO2, your own, like hurting your lungs. I mean, that has to do with my body too. What if I don't want to wear a mask for that reason? I mean, is that the same thing? I'm not trying to you know what I mean? I'm curious because
I think that's a hypothetical that's just not reality. A mask isn't injecting other particles into your body that's going to change your physical makeup or chemical reactions in your body. I think we're really crossing the line here where it's, hey, if I'm going to have a stand against this for darn good reason, you know, that, hey, God made me this way without this in there. But
Not just because I don't want to do it.
No, not at all. Not because I just don't want to do it. That's a pretty easy one to say. You have your personal, I guess, before God to say, no, I'm not going to allow that in my body. But to not be rebellious, I'm going to take the consequence. You're laying out the cards for me. Here, the government's saying, do this or don't buy food. Do this or don't. Oh, I'm going to choose not to buy food. I'm going to choose not to
fly on a plane
go
to a concert.
I'm going to make that choice because it's going to not go to prison first. It's going to be these other things. You're being offered a choice. You have the right to choose, but don't complain about it after. You chose not to travel. You chose not to go anywhere. You chose. So I think in that case, it's not as. We're still supposed to submit to authority.
Well, and I think that's the main question is, am I outright sinning towards God if I'm told by the authority above me that I have to take this vaccine and I choose not to?
All of this comes down to some kind of personal. We all personally have to weigh these things out. We know people who have decided, you know what, I've weighed this out, and for me, I can't do this, or for me, I got to do this, or for that's something you have to work out with God. But we're talking generally speaking, God wants us to submit to the authorities over us. Why? So that we can continue to do His work, so that we live at peace, so we can continue to spread the gospel. That's why He wants us to, and it even says, as far as is, upon us to live at peace with everybody, follow the governing authority, so it's not hard on you, that we go with this, until the governing authorities say, you can't do something God's commanded you to do. Well, now we have to follow God before that. So I think generally speaking, this is pretty easy. But this one is different in the fact of accepting a chemical in your body that can be that's just, you know what? That is as evil as it comes.
Well, that was the other half of the question.
Nothing's more evil than a government or a person forcing us to put something in our bodies. And I don't care if it comes to safety or whatever. That's all BS when it comes to no one should tell us we have to. No government, nowhere, anywhere. And we know worldwide they do it all the time and throughout history. But that is just wrong for any government to do that. That doesn't mean we shouldn't still submit to it if we are okay with it. And some people would be, some people are fine with it.
Well, I think that was the other half of what they were asking too is it a sin for me to inject this into my body? Because, there's some parts that talk about how that could potentially be a sin. And I think they're wondering that as well, because they said, well, that would make the decision really easy then if I'm being told I have to do this, but it's a sin to actually do it.
Yeah, I personally answer that. I would have to have more detail about what this stuff is and all that. Because I couldn't say right now that taking a flu shot is a sin. I mean, you can go so far. There's some people say buying insurance is a sin because you're not trusting God. I don't buy that. But, you can go there. I personally don't go there. You buy a car and you could just trust God to transport you somewhere.
He did that one time.
He did. I know, Philip. But
does it with Teslas all the time.
Okay. The point is,
Kevin, okay.
Are we getting too extreme? Are we getting, come on, let's just try to simplify this as much as we can and keep some basic principles in line here. Is it a sin to get a vaccine? I would say, generally speaking, no. I think that's part of medical science. I think it's more of a miracle than it is a sin, generally speaking. It's a miracle that medical science has come up with the things that they have. It's not a sin at all. It's accepting a miracle from God. But I would have to know what's in it, personally.
But just devil's advocate, do you look up what's in other medicines that you get?
No.
So why would this one be different?
Because of what I've heard. I haven't heard, that stuff. And so, no, I don't claim to be a doctor, nor will I ever. We're all kind of subject to the information that we're given.
Yeah.
And if the government lies to me and I don't know what's in it, and then I wouldn't be bothered by it, I'm not going to do my personal own research. However,
are you going to get it?
I have no idea.
Oh.
No idea. I haven't even thought about it.
I think for me, the part, which I don't know if they brought it up in this question. Oh, they must have, because it's what you said, is really the sin issue. I would have to settle out in my mind, do I really believe, more than just like, am I willing to do the consequences? I would really have to settle out in my mind, do I believe this would be a sin against God to take this vaccine? Because otherwise, I would have to default back to, well, then I have to submit. If it's not a sin against God, now whether I do it or not is a whole different story.
Right.
But I would have to admit in my mind, okay, this is not a sin, and so by not taking it, I am not submitting to authority. And now I got to deal with consequences. Not like there's, not salvation, but whatever, sort of thing. So that for me is the bigger thing. And I think if you had asked me this question 4 months ago, 9 months ago, I just would have been gung-ho, like, oh, absolutely not. Like, there's no way in the world I would ever take a vaccine. Like, I think it's just horrible. But I am caught in the middle right now.
Yep.
I am definitely in the...
We've taken...
Part of it plays into that insurance trust thing of like, well, but if I really trust that God is in control and this earth and this body is not all there is and I've got eternity, and like, so part of me lays into that line of thinking of, well, what's a vaccine? Like, ultimately, what's a vaccine going to do? I don't know. In the long run, probably nothing, But then the other side, where Paul writes in Corinthians, like, hey, if you do something against your conscience, man, that's a sin for you. We don't have to spell it out with, here's the 100 billion rules that everybody has to follow.
Right.
We have a conscience and a connection to God there for a reason that we can use wise thinking. So, my answer to her question is, I don't know.
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry.
Don't you all think that so many things, get blown out of proportion, all that stuff. And we forget to see, sometimes we think, man, everything they do is evil. It's not. We've wiped out polio. What an amazing thing. There's somebody in the family that I know very close that has polio. And, it's what a terrible thing to think that we've created. And I believe because God has opened up the minds of people to understand how he created us and how we're made, that think it was, what an amazing thing, polio. And I'm sure there were Christians when the polio vaccine came out that were, oh no, I'm not going to do this. And I know we can all hear stories of 0.1% of people who take the vaccine, it does them more harm than good. But generally speaking, it's like we take medication. If you can do it a different way, do it. Because all medication has a side effect. But the properties, the healing properties of the medication outweigh the side effects. They're keeping us living longer. So let's not over-spiritualize this thing. Let's not over-spiritualize it. Let's look at it with sober judgment and for me, it wouldn't be a sin to take a vaccine. It might be wise. It might be a good idea to continue, I think of what Paul did.
To do business and go in the community and have relationships and not be outcast. And
what good is it to be, on the Isle of Patmos when you could be doing ministry, I just think of what Paul did, and there's nothing greater. We look at it lightly today, but For Paul to bring Timothy through all the ceremonial cleansing he did, for Paul to go back to Jerusalem and follow all these worthless Jewish activities. If I was a missionary today, if any of us were a missionary today in the Middle East, if we were missionaries to the Muslim world, we would follow rules and practices that appear to be against God. But we know there is no other God but our God. We would submit to these things for the purpose of building God's kingdom and propagating the gospel. Why wouldn't we do this instead of being taken out? But here's the thing. We got to be honest with ourselves. If our life's not about building the kingdom of God, well, then who cares what you do? I mean, kind of. Well, go to jail or stay in your house.
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally would rather live with risk and be out in the world and doing church and doing all that stuff under risk, or under, if the government says I got to do this or do this, I would submit to that to continue ministering the gospel until that submission would be a direct opposition to what God has said to do.
Yeah.
And Paul came very close. Matter of fact, what he did looked like it was an opposition to what God said to do. It was a heart thing that he wasn't participating, but it sure looked like he was.
So you would say your personal opinion right now, which can change, is getting a vaccine would not be a sin against God.
I don't see
For
any.
you.
I don't see any reason why, generally speaking, get a vaccine would be a sin against God ever. Like I said, unless the ingredients of that vaccine was aborting babies in order to get it. Okay, then you got to say, wait a minute. But let's say they're getting it from plants and animals and whatever. I don't see how that could be a sin. I just don't. It might just be plain old wisdom. When Jesus said, you're going to do even greater things than I've done, I personally
That's part of what he's talking about.
I do. I think it's part of the medical breakthroughs and science and what we've discovered, and all of that is amazing things.
I have no opinion.
Zero opinion?
You two conflict me on a daily basis. I swear.
Welcome to what goes on in my head all the time.
Like, I feel like I know like what I want to do or what I should do. Then I talk to one of you two, and then I'm just like,
well, dang it.
Oh, come on. Okay.
I would say this. I would be, earlier on when the whole mask thing came out, I personally was pretty bold and strong
I was pretty fired up.
Nope, this is what we are supposed to do. Like, I didn't think there was a lot of gray area in this. I personally would not hold such a hard stance against anyone who chooses to do something different because of the personal conscious aspect in all of this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I don't think we should
What if
ever judge others
Yeah.
to what they decide. But
What if it gets to the point where, I don't know if this is what brought up her question, but I remember seeing last week that Ticketmaster is already starting to implement plans with, if you want to attend a concert or an event and you get something from them, you have to show proof that you got this or a couple other things. But basically, they're just opening the door to, this is going to be required to do business in the world, right? It's going to start slow and look like it's good, but we know where it's going.
I think so.
So like, I wonder, man, if that starts there, how long before that pressure is on us as a church? Where are we going to be allowed to open up to the public anymore? And are we going to have to require that you show us a certificate?
Okay,
or
how about this?
Holy
Kevin,
buckets.
I feel like I know what I want in my life. And then you have to say things like, well, I'd rather live with risk if I'm doing the mission for God. And I'm like, okay, well, all right. Now I got to go think about this more.
We're right after, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I came back from Alaska right after 9/11, the bombing and all this. This terrorists, Far Eastern or Middle Eastern terrorists, anybody that looked like that was social profiled and stuff. And our government kind of had, if you're gonna fly on an airplane, then you have to jump through these hoops or whatever. We weren't against that. It was for safety.
Yeah.
And it didn't cross the line. But Why are we so against it? Well, number one, because we don't believe coronavirus is a big deal, right? I mean, basically, we don't think it's that big a deal.
Not as big as what the
As
media,
what the media
has made
makes
it out
it,
to
right.
be.
Please
So-
don't tear us apart for that.
Please,
Yes.
we don't need all that.
You know, what we've done around the world with curing malaria and, like I said, polio and just so many other things. Why are we automatically against? Because we kind of are, especially Christians. We're automatically against. Nothing wrong with being on guard, but we're against you telling me I have to do something. I think that's more against our American than our Christian.
Yeah.
Our American bent is don't tell me what to do because we are so used to freedom and stuff. It's an amazing thing.
I was just because you brought up the whole Christian aspect. I do not believe that whatever happens with the coronavirus vaccine, it is not the mark of the devil, and accepting it is not putting 666. Oh, they're going to inject it in your wrist. Listen, there's nothing to do with this at all.
We live in a culture that it says
Now I got to think more again. No, I'm just
our
kidding.
culture tells us that if you want to buy and sell and do trade, you have to have money, currency to transfer. Okay. So what if they say, well, you need a chip? Okay. What? There's not.
I actually would
You
like
would
that.
invite
I
that.
would too.
Please.
Hey, let's simplify my life.
Yep.
Now,
I don't gotta carry around a
Christians
stupid
generally,
wallet.
we just go, oh no, because that's the avenue in which the Antichrist is going to do his stuff. But he's also going to use automobiles, I'm sure. So should we ban those? Here's what I really want everybody to understand, and I feel very passionate about this. We are against the Antichrist and what he stands for. We are not against technology that he's going to use. Big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference. I would take a chip today if it made my life easier to do commerce. But I know this. If they said, you have to deny Jesus Christ and bow and submit to this figure, and
Take
then
it
we'll
out.
take... I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. No, I'm not going to do that. But they're not saying that. And some may argue, oh, but it's just making it easier. Trust me.
Well, maybe it
Technology-
is, but we're not there, so who cares?
Technology is not the problem.
No.
Okay? It's the Antichrist and anti-Christian movement that's going to happen someday, and maybe sooner than later, that we are against, and we cannot bow to the Antichrist. Can we drive automobiles because they're more efficient than horses? Absolutely. Can we take airplanes because they really... Yeah, absolutely. Technology is great. Can we use the internet? Of course we can, to do good. Don't be afraid of technology is my big thing. Like, oh my gosh. Technology is fantastic.
Or vaccines.
I would
You
say...
would lean that way.
Don't be
I
afraid
would
of
lean
science.
towards vaccines have gotten us where we are today. They have done so much blessing.
Way more good than bad.
Way more good than bad. I mean, totally more good than bad. So let's wait and see what's in this vaccine before we make a judgment call.
I would say the only, which you already brought up, the only reason I would get this vaccine would be so that I can continue to do the mission.
Yeah.
Because I don't get, I mean, other than when I was a little kid and it forced to, I've never once gotten the flu vaccine
Nor have
as an
I.
adult.
Neither have I.
Like, it's not that important to me. I don't, I don't really think it works that way. I've been fine. Well, so there's no impetus for me to want to get this one for my own health or the health of my family or whatever sort of thing. The only reason I would be if I can keep doing the mission and keep living in this world.
Prime example. I'm glad you brought that up. I am 60 years old, and my doctor says, get your flu vaccine, get your flu vaccine. I've never gotten a flu vaccine, nor do I plan on getting one. But if the government said you have to get the flu vaccine in order to do stuff, first of all, I would never vote for people that would say that, okay? And anybody who does is a
Because
snowflake.
that's how we affect change. We don't burn buildings.
I would be so against it, but I would follow it so that I could still do life. I would. And you say, well, that's just going along with it. No, we go back to voting is what, okay, voting is where we make a difference. Voting and convincing other people to vote,
And
being vocal.
sharing our opinions and
Yes,
free speech as long as
absolutely.
we got it.
Absolutely.
Might not be long.
For as long as it's here.
So if the government said right now, all pastors, because they're in front of so many people, have to get a flu vaccine every fall, would you?
Yeah.
Of course you would. You wouldn't agree with it.
I would not.
You would, but you
what's
would
the
do it.
alternative? Sorry, guys, I'm not going to pass you. I'll be in my basement on Sunday mornings because I didn't want to get a flu
stream.
vaccine.
And I would work twice as hard to convince everybody around me to change the leadership and the people who think this way about controlling us. I'd rather work back to being more free and more in if I weighed out, well,
Safety
the government,
and freedom.
Safety and freedom.
Yep.
Give
Freedom
me
every day.
freedom every time I can live in a not safe world.
Yep.
You know, absolutely.
Yep.
We just covered a lot, but that was a great question.
That was a good question.
A great question.
It was a long email and an even longer answer.
Before we go here, I'm going to clarify something because we're going to get lit up if I don't. Kevin said that we don't care about coronavirus, okay?
I did. I said I think
Said we don't-
the thought out there.
Thank you for clearing this
I'm going to
up.
speak.
There's
I'll-
two schools of thought.
I
Some
will
people
speak
think
for
it's
me
going to kill
personally,
everybody, and
okay?
some people think it's not a big
Here
deal.
is
That's
the
all I'm saying.
official position of Access Church.
I will speak for me personally.
Oh,
if you
okay.
guys want to say more, you can.
All right.
I have had coronavirus. You guys know this,
Yep.
okay? I did just
You
fine.
quarantined yourself.
I quarantined myself. I did just fine. Statistically, I am in the age group that
Doesn't
it's not going to affect me
affect.
that much, okay? I have also had family members pass away because of coronavirus. So it's not that I don't care about coronavirus. It's that I don't buy into the hysteria behind it. Because if you look at statistics, which we have, the survival rate is pretty much in the favor of mostly
Pretty
everybody.
much in the favor?
Yeah, it's in the favor of mostly everybody.
Overwhelmingly.
So I just personally choose, and I know you guys do the same because we've talked about it, to not get hysterical about it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the facts. Look at science. We're okay.
I
It's
would
real.
agree with
It
everything you
exists.
said.
Yep.
That's my
But-
stance as well. It's out there. It's real.
Yep.
It's not as bad as what it's been made out to be.
We just don't let the fear of it control our daily lives. That's all.
correct.
So we don't
Manage
mean to
risk.
be. We're not belittling it. We're not
Not
putting
at
it
all.
down.
No.
I just choose to look at the numbers and
Please
not be
don't hate
hysterical.
us.
Please don't light us up with comments. We understand coronavirus is real. Okay,
Absolutely.
we get it.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Ask us more. Oh, just shut up. I'm looking at this camera now. We're gonna finish quick. Oh! No!